our society.
This is it. So then we're thinking about the way that in the way that Green Christian talks about what people do or tries to involve people, they really need to stress the idea that it's collective action, and also they need to talk about structures that oppress people, which can be quite difficult because it's quite an abstract idea, but rather than people starting to feel personally, individually responsible, because then that can actually be quite isolating and lead to them going away. So we were thinking about broader structures like this urban and then things like that. Saying these environments create hopelessness, ill health, feeling of isolation, the kind of repertoire of possible behaviours just shrinks right down and it feels impossible to do anything differently. Other people around you or the person might say, behave differently and sort of urge them to do things differently or complain to them about the behaviour, but the person starts to feel very powerless. So what kind of happens is this person's potential then is sort of stolen by the oppressive structure, and they're sort of lost both to themselves and the sort of wider movement they could be part of. So we were sort of talking about the way we need to help each individual to move beyond the situation by helping to see the structure and then together acting on that rather than just individually. So it kind of gets into the bigger picture, but we're going to now move on to specifics about...
We're going to come back to this at the end, the recommendations we've decided.
Yeah,
so what we... so all of this obviously was about accessibility, and I think actually the suggestions you gave covered a lot of these things, but we're just going to run through them really quickly.
Yes. So we talked about younger parents. One of the things including our recommendations is perhaps a creche. Again, all of our recommendations are sort of a balance between resources available to Green Christian, balanced with the value of them, what's actually feasible, but also thinking about how events can be all family oriented as well, rather than perhaps just adults. We also thought about certain practicalities, so time restraints, people in full-time work, balancing 2 jobs maybe, giving up a whole weekend or giving up a whole day, addressing that.
I suppose even just, if you wanted a young person on your steering committee and that meets on a Friday, that means a day of work, so
It doesn't always meet on Friday.
Also, things like suggesting shopping locally, public transport, all of these things take time. So, for example, shopping, trying to shop locally, actually outside work hours is really difficult. So I know this is something you're aware of already, but that was something that we felt was an access issue, to how do people that are living with very, very limited time still feel encouraged to make small steps rather than, it's just impossible for me.
So we talked about how the surroundings issue a lot. So a lot of this will be your limitations if you're renting, so you can't make certain changes to your property. I felt quite sad in the Ringsfield talks. I was I can't do any of this. I cannot do any of this because I'm in bills included rent, so I don't even have a say over my electricity supplier. Also, I think we've talked a lot about mobility and job insecurity. So in the last 7 years, I've lived in 7 different houses in 3 different cities. So I think that kind of impairs your ability to be able to get involved in a community. If the allotment waiting list is 3 years and you think you're probably going to be leaving in 2 years, it's not really very difficult. The thing that hasn't been mentioned here, and it's really important, is mental health. I spoke to someone from TFN recently who identified mental health as their biggest barrier in engaging with young adults. So I think just learn about mental health, be really mental health aware, be aware of people's different capabilities and capacity. I've been in a few activist groups in Lancaster where we have different ways of kind of managing this. So I'm part of an all-women's activist group, and at the start of each meeting we just spend 5 minutes and we go around and everyone says how they're feeling, so we know if someone's having a really rough day, just to be kind and that kind of thing, and just having that openness with each other.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Are you talking about young people having higher levels of mental ill health, or just being more open and vocal about talking about it?
I think it's both actually. I think the levels of mental health are quite high in this generation, but I also think that we are the generation that's breaking the stigma on it. So that openness part is really important. And the other group I'm part of, it was just people saying, no, you're doing too much, you can't do that. And just looking out for people and making sure people don't burn out and that kind of thing, I think is really important. So that's, yeah.
I just want, one of the things we're doing some case studies that we collected from people in their 20s and 30s, and I wanted to read one for everybody to hear, that somebody who suffers with depression. I've struggled with depression most of my adult life. One of the things that really helps me to cope with it is to feel like I'm helping others and making a difference through my life in some small way. That is how I got involved in campaigning on social justice. One of the things that is most difficult for me, however, is that sometimes I get very overwhelmed by the suffering in the world, and it can become quite immobilising for me, especially at a time when I'm struggling, particularly with my mental health. Even when I'm feeling strong, I have to be careful not to expose myself to too much, as it can quite suddenly catch up with me. I particularly struggle with this in relation to climate change. I'm aware that even by being alive, I am contributing to it, and that can be quite a disturbing thought for me.
I think that's